Blood pooled beneath his ribs in a shade she had never seen before, silver threaded through crimson, catching the fluorescent light like mercury spilled across linoleum. Nora Ashford pressed her back against the clinic's glass door, keys still dangling from her trembling fingers. The man slumped against the frame was impossibly tall, his white hair falling across a face that looked carved from alabaster. His coat, expensive enough to feed her for a month, had been slashed open at the side, and beneath it his shirt clung to skin so pale it seemed to glow. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said, his voice carrying an accent she couldn't place, something old and European that had been worn smooth by centuries. "I would not have come, but I find myself in a rather compromised position. Don't move." The words came automatically, nurse training overriding the surreal horror of the moment. She dropped her keys, her purse, everything, and caught him under the arms as his knees buckled. He was heavy, solid, and cold as winter stone. "I've got you. Come on, just a few more steps." The clinic had officially closed at midnight. Nora had stayed behind to inventory supplies, to stretch out the moment before she had to go home to her studio apartment with its empty refrigerator and overdue rent notices. The South Harbor Free Clinic survived on donations and her willingness to work 60-hour weeks for a salary that barely covered her nursing school loans. She should have left 2 hours ago. She should have been asleep. Instead, she half-dragged a dying man through the waiting room, past chairs held together with duct tape and posters about vaccination schedules, into the single examination room. He moved with her, trying to bear his own weight, but she could feel him failing. On the table, carefully, she guided him down, and he complied with unsettling grace despite the wound. Up close, his features were almost too perfect, symmetrical in a way that human faces never quite managed. His eyes, when they met hers, were the color of smoke and winter sky. She grabbed gloves, gauze, antiseptic. Her hands moved through familiar motions even as her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The wound ran from just below his ribs down toward his hip, deep enough that she could see muscle, maybe organ tissue. He should have been screaming. He should have been unconscious. Instead, he watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I need to cut the shirt away," she said. "Do what you must." The fabric parted under her trauma shears, revealing more of that impossibly pale skin. No scars, no birthmarks, no imperfections at all except for the gaping wound that leaked silver-tinged blood onto her examination table. She pressed gauze against it, applying pressure, and felt him go absolutely rigid beneath her hands, not a flinch of pain. Something else entirely. "Has anyone ever told you that you have very gentle hands?" His voice had gone soft, almost wondering. "I'm literally pushing on an open wound right now," Nora said, checking the gauze. "Already soaked through." She grabbed more, layered it, pressed harder. "This is probably the opposite of gentle." "No." He reached up and she froze as his fingers hovered just above her wrist, not quite touching. "You are the first to bandage you? That seems unlikely given." She gestured vaguely at the wound, at him, at everything about this situation that made no sense. "The first to touch me," he said. "Not with fear, not with reverence, not with the intent to use or to bargain or to prove dominance. Just touch, to help. You do not even know what I am." The words hung between them. Nora looked at the silver blood on her gloves, at his white hair and whiter skin, at the wound that was already beginning to close at the edges where she'd pressed the gauze. She thought about every late-night horror movie she'd half-watched during nursing school, every urban legend whispered in the break room, every impossible thing she'd dismissed as fiction. "You're going to tell me you're a vampire," she said flatly. "I am Xenocrates Dreadhaven," he replied, as if that explained everything. And yes, she should have run, should have called the police or a priest or a mental health crisis team. Instead, she found herself checking his pulse, professional habit overriding reason. Nothing. No heartbeat under her fingers. Just cold skin and the faint hum of something that felt like electricity. "The wound is closing," she observed, because apparently this was her life now. "Do you need stitches or do you just heal on your own or—" "It will heal. But slowly." The weapon was silver, and silver resists our regeneration. He shifted on the table and she saw him wince for the first time. "I would not normally allow myself to be injured so easily, but my opponent had the advantage of surprise and centuries of resentment. Someone stabbed you because they resent you? Someone challenged me because he believes I have ruled too long and too rigidly." Xenocrates met her eyes again and she saw something almost like amusement there. "He is not entirely wrong." Nora pulled back the gauze carefully, assessing. The bleeding had slowed to a seep. The edges of the wound looked cleaner now, as if his body was knitting itself back together cell by cell. She'd never seen anything like it outside of time-lapse videos of healing. "I'm going to clean this properly," she said, "and bandage it so it doesn't reopen when you move. I can't give you antibiotics because I'm guessing your physiology doesn't work like mine. But infection is probably not your main concern anyway." "It is not, then sit still and let me work." She cleaned the wound with saline, noting the way the silver traces in his blood seemed to evaporate when exposed to air. The flesh beneath was already starting to knit, sluggish but steady. She worked in silence, layering gauze, wrapping bandages around his torso. He had to sit up for her to do it properly, and when her hands circled his chest to pass the bandage roll, he went still again with that same arrested quality. "You really weren't kidding about the touching thing," she said quietly. "I am a king," Xenocrates said. "People bow before me, they kneel, they avert their eyes and offer their throats and negotiate for favors. The last person who laid hands on me unbidden was attempting to assassinate me. That was in 1847. Nora's hands paused. 1847. I have ruled for 600 years. Give or take a decade. One loses count. She finished wrapping the bandage and secured it with medical tape. Her fingers brushed his skin as she smoothed the tape down, and she felt him draw in a breath he didn't need. When she stepped back, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "There," she said. "Try not to get stabbed again for at least 48 hours. Come back if it gets worse, but honestly, I think you'll be fine. You are not afraid." "I'm terrified," Nora corrected. "I'm just also very, very tired, and I stopped being shocked by things around the second year of nursing school. Do you need help getting wherever you're going? Or do you have someone waiting outside?" "I came alone." He slid off the table with that impossible grace, testing his weight. "I should not have come at all, but I found myself outside your door and could not think of anywhere else that seemed safe." The word sounded strange in his mouth, as if he wasn't used to saying it. "You're welcome," Nora said. Then, because her mouth always got ahead of her brain when she was exhausted, she added, "Though I should probably mention that I'm not equipped to handle vampire royalty on a regular basis. This is a free clinic. We mostly do STI testing and flu shots. And yet you handled me quite competently." Xenocrates straightened his ruined coat and somehow still managed to look regal. "I am in your debt, Nora Ashford." She blinked. "I didn't tell you my name. It is on your identification badge. Right, obviously." She rubbed her eyes, feeling the crash coming, the adrenaline finally wearing off. "Look, just try to stay out of trouble, okay? I don't know what vampire health insurance looks like, but I'm guessing you can afford better than this place. Money is not the resource I find myself lacking." He moved toward the door, then paused. "May I return? If I find myself in need of assistance again, I mean technically the clinic is open to everyone. We don't discriminate based on species, apparently." Nora started gathering the blood-soaked gauze, disposing of it in the biohazard container, though maybe aim for actual operating hours next time. "I am not in need of medical assistance," Xenocrates said. "I am in need of this, of being touched as if I am simply a patient, of being treated as if I am simply a man." The honesty of it struck her silent. She looked at him, really looked, and saw past the supernatural beauty and the impossible age to something profoundly lonely. "The clinic is open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 8, and Friday 8 to midnight," she heard herself say. "I usually work nights. Thursday through Monday, then I will see you Thursday." He inclined his head in something that wasn't quite a bow. "Thank you, Nora Ashford, for your gentle hands and your lack of fear." He left, and she stood alone in the examination room, surrounded by the evidence that the last 20 minutes had actually happened. Silver-tinged blood on the linoleum, the torn coat he'd left behind, too ruined to save. The lingering cold in the air as if winter had walked through. Nora cleaned up slowly, methodically, filing the encounter away in the part of her brain that dealt with things too strange to process. Then she locked up, drove home to her apartment, and fell into bed still wearing her scrubs. She didn't expect to see him again. He returned on Thursday. Nora was triaging a kid with strep throat when Marcus, the intake volunteer, stuck his head into the examination room and said, "There's someone asking for you specifically. Says it's urgent, but he doesn't look injured. Should I send him back?" "Give me 5 minutes," Nora said, finishing the throat swab. She sent the kid out with instructions to wait for his rapid test results and found Xenocrates standing in the waiting room like a marble statue dropped into a thrift store. He wore different clothes tonight, dark and expensive, but he'd covered his distinctive hair with a hat. Still, people stared. It was impossible not to. "You came during operating hours," Nora said. "I'm almost impressed. You said to." He looked around the waiting room, at the peeling paint and the leaking ceiling tile and the space heater someone had set up because the building's heating was inadequate. "This is where you work every night?" 4 nights a week. Sometimes 5 if someone calls in sick. She checked the waiting room. 2 more patients ahead of him. "I'm going to be a while. Are you actually hurt, or was that thing you said about needing assistance metaphorical?" "The wound is healed completely. I came because I said I would." He paused. "And because I find I have nowhere else I wish to be." That should have been creepy. Somehow, delivered in his formal, antique way, it just sounded honest. "Take a seat," Nora said. "I'll get to you when I can." He sat and he waited. Nora treated the strep throat, a sprained ankle, a urinary tract infection that needed antibiotics, and a diabetic who'd run out of insulin 3 days ago and was trying to stretch his supply. By the time she called Xenocrates back, it was nearly 10 and she'd been on her feet for 6 hours straight. "Examination room 2, she said, leading him down the hall. "So what is this really about? Are you checking up on me? Making sure I'm not going to tell anyone about the Vampire King bleeding on my floor? I am ensuring that the person who showed me kindness is well." Xenocrates settled onto the examination table, watching her. "You look exhausted." "Yeah, well, that's pretty standard." Nora washed her hands, more for something to do than out of medical necessity. "Did you resolve your succession dispute? Or should I expect your opponent to show up here looking for you?" "Valdrin has retreated to his holdings to nurse his wounded pride. I imagine he will challenge me again within the decade." Xenocrates said it as casually as someone else might discuss a recurring dentist appointment. "The wound he gave me was meant to humiliate, not to kill. Silver through the ribs, painful and slow to heal, but not fatal. He wanted me to know he could hurt me. Seems like he succeeded. He did. But he also revealed that he is not yet ready to take the throne. A true killing strike would have been through the heart or the severing of my head." He hesitated. Xenocrates tilted his head, studying her. "You do not ask about the nature of vampire politics. I barely have time to follow human politics." Nora leaned against the counter, letting herself rest for a moment. "And honestly, I'm more concerned about the fact that you're here again." "What do you actually want from me, Xenocrates?" "An hour where I am not a king," he said simply. "An hour where someone touches me as you did, as if I am just a person in need. I have not had that in longer than you have been alive." The loneliness in his voice was so naked it hurt to hear. "I don't know how to help with that," Nora said honestly. "I'm a nurse, not a therapist, and I'm barely keeping myself together most days." "Then perhaps we can be two people who are barely keeping themselves together, spending an hour in each other's company." Xenocrates watched her with those smoke-colored eyes. "I will leave if you ask. But I would like to stay." Nora should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries. Should have protected herself from getting entangled with something as dangerous as a vampire king. Instead, she found herself nodding. "Okay," she said. "But I have to finish my shift first. It ends at midnight." "I will wait." And he did. He sat in the examination room, quiet and still, while she saw the rest of her patients. Occasionally she came back to grab supplies or make notes in a chart, and he was always there, watching her work with an expression of deep focus. It should have been unnerving. Instead, it felt almost comforting, having someone simply present without demands. At midnight, she finished her last chart and found him still waiting. "I need to lock up," she said. "Do you want to walk with me?" They stepped out into the October night, the city cold and damp around them. Nora locked the clinic door, tested it twice out of habit, then started walking toward the bus stop. Xenocrates fell into step beside her. "You take public transportation," he observed. "My car died last year. Couldn't afford to fix it." Nora pulled her jacket tighter. "The bus runs until 1, so I usually make it home fine. I could arrange for a car to drive you. I don't need charity from a vampire king." "What if I simply hired you a car service because the thought of you waiting at bus stops in the dark concerns me?" Nora stopped walking and looked at him. "You don't even know me." "I know that you are kind," Xenocrates said. "I know that you work yourself to exhaustion helping people who cannot pay you. I know that when a stranger collapsed at your door bleeding silver, you treated him without hesitation. I know that your hands are gentle and your eyes are tired and you have not eaten dinner tonight." "How do you know that last part?" "I can hear your stomach growling." "Despite everything," Nora laughed. "Okay, that's both impressive and embarrassing. There is a diner 3 blocks from here that stays open all night. May I buy you dinner?" She should have said no. She had a dozen reasons to say no. But the thought of going home to her empty apartment, of eating cereal over the sink because she was too tired to bother with a bowl, suddenly seemed unbearable. "Only if you tell me more about this whole Vampire King thing," she said. "Because I have questions." The diner was nearly empty at this hour, just a handful of insomniacs and night shift workers scattered across the vinyl booths. They took a corner table, and Nora ordered coffee and a burger while Xenocrates requested tea he wouldn't drink. "So," Nora said, wrapping her hands around the coffee mug for warmth. 600 years old, that's a long time to be in charge of anything. Too long, according to Valdrin and others like him. Xenocrates turned the teacup in his hands, a gesture that seemed more nervous habit than purposeful. "They argue that I have become rigid, that I cling to old ways while the world changes around us. They may be right. What do you think?" "I think that I have been a king for so long that I have forgotten how to be anything else." He met her eyes across the table. "Until a tired nurse treated me as if I were simply a man with a wound that needed tending. I really didn't do anything special," Nora said. "That's just basic nursing. See problem, fix problem, move on to the next patient. And yet it was the first time in centuries that someone has touched me without an agenda. Do you understand how rare that is? Every interaction I have is filtered through politics, through fear, through the weight of what I am and what I can do for or to people. You just fixed me, because I was hurt, for no other reason. The burger arrived and Nora ate mechanically, trying to remember the last time she'd had a real meal. Yesterday? The day before? You need to take better care of yourself, Xenocrates said, watching her. Says the guy who got stabbed 3 days ago. I am immortal, you are not. Your exhaustion is not sustainable. Yeah, well, neither is my bank account, so here we are. Nora took another bite, chewed, swallowed. The clinic pays just enough to keep me barely afloat. I could get a job at a hospital, make twice as much, but then who would staff the clinic? We're the only free healthcare for 20 blocks. People depend on us. People depend on you, Xenocrates corrected. And you are burning yourself to ash to keep them warm. The accuracy of it stung. Nora set down her burger, suddenly not hungry. I don't know how else to be, she admitted. I became a nurse because I wanted to help people, but somewhere along the way it turned into just drowning. I'm drowning, and I don't know how to stop, and I definitely don't know how to ask for help. Xenocrates was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I understand that more than you might think, duty can become a prison if we are not careful. They sat in silence while Nora finished her food. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in harsh white light, but somehow the moment felt intimate anyway. Why did you really come back? Nora asked finally. The truth, because in 600 years you are the first person who has made me feel human, Xenocrates said, and I find I am not ready to give that up yet. Over the next 3 weeks it became a pattern. Xenocrates would appear at the clinic every time Nora worked, would wait through her shift, would walk her to the diner afterward. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about vampire politics, the intricate web of courts and territories and ancient grudges. She told him about nursing school debt, about the patients she couldn't save, about the peculiar loneliness of caring for everyone except yourself. He never fed in front of her, never made any threatening moves. He was just present, attentive in a way Nora had never experienced before. He listened when she talked, remembered details, asked follow-up questions. He started bringing her coffee during her shifts, always prepared exactly how she liked it. He waited without complaint, reading books in the examination room, content just to be near her. You know, people are starting to talk, Marcus said one night, side-eyeing Xenocrates as he sat in his usual spot. The really pale guy who comes in and stares at you for 4 hours straight? It's a little intense. He's harmless, Nora said, which was possibly the least accurate description of a vampire king in history. He's something. Marcus lowered his voice. Is he your boyfriend? No, we're just... Nora paused, realizing she had no idea how to categorize their relationship. Friends, I think. But it was starting to feel like more than friendship. The way Xenocrates watched her, the way his expression softened when she smiled, the way he'd started reaching for her hand without seeming to realize he was doing it, the way her heart jumped every time she saw him waiting. It came to a head on a Thursday in November. Nora was finishing up with a patient when she heard raised voices from the waiting room. She rushed out to find Xenocrates standing very still, facing a man who was nearly as pale as him, with white hair cut short and eyes like chips of ice. You cannot hide here forever, the stranger was saying. The court demands your presence. Your absence is noted, Xenocrates. People are beginning to question, let them question. Xenocrates didn't raise his voice, but something in his tone made the temperature in the room drop. I will return when I choose to return. Valdrin, the one who had stabbed him. Nora's hand went instinctively to the panic button hidden behind the reception desk. You neglect your duties for a human? Valdrin's gaze swept the room and landed on Nora. For her? A mortal nurse in a mortal clinic? Have you gone mad? Careful, Xenocrates said, and now his voice was cold enough to freeze. You overstep? I overstep? You abandon your court, your people, your responsibilities, and I overstep? Valdrin moved closer, aggressive. The nobles are gathering, Xenocrates. They see your weakness. They see you spending your nights here instead of on your throne. How long before they follow my example and decide you are no longer fit to rule? If they wish to challenge me, they know where to find me. They should not have to find you. You should be where a king belongs. Valdrin's eyes found Nora again. She has bewitched you somehow. What did you promise her? Immortality? Wealth? Protection? I promised her nothing, Xenocrates said. She asks for nothing. That is precisely why I am here. Then you are a fool. Valdrin turned sharply. I will tell the court that you refuse to return. When they come for you, do not expect mercy, and do not expect them to distinguish between you and your pet human. He left, and the cold went with him. Nora realized she was shaking. Are you all right? Xenocrates was at her side immediately, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching, still asking permission even now. Is he right? Nora asked. Are you neglecting your responsibilities to be here? I am choosing to spend my time differently than I have for 6 centuries. If that constitutes neglect, then yes, Xenocrates. She looked up at him, at this impossible being who had somehow become the best part of her week. I don't want to be the reason you lose your throne. I don't want to be the reason other vampires come after you. You are not the reason. You are the excuse I was waiting for. He finally let his hands settle on her shoulders, warm pressure through her scrubs. I have been a king for so long that I forgot there were other ways to live. You reminded me. Every night I spend here, watching you care for people who cannot repay you, watching you give everything you have to help strangers. I remember what it means to simply be good. Not powerful. Not feared. Just good. I'm not that good, Nora said. I'm just doing my job. You are extraordinary, and you cannot see it. His thumbs moved in small circles on her shoulders, soothing. But Valdrin is not wrong about one thing. The court will not accept my absence indefinitely. Eventually, they will demand I return and resume my full duties, or they will demand I choose between the throne and what? And you. The words were quiet, but they hit like thunder. I am falling in love with you, Nora Ashford. I have been falling since the moment you pressed gauze to my wound and told me to hold still, and I do not know what to do about it, because my world and yours are not compatible. Nora's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. You're falling in love with me. Is that so surprising? You're a 600-year-old vampire king and I'm a broke nurse who eats cereal for dinner. Yes, it's surprising. You are a woman who touches me as if I matter, as if I am real and present and worthy of gentleness. Do you know how precious that is? His hands tightened on her shoulders. I would give up my throne for it, for you. But I do not know if I have the right to ask you to accept the consequences of that choice. What consequences? Valdrin will not be the last to challenge me. If I step down, there will be a power struggle. If I stay but refuse to give you up, the court will see you as a weakness to exploit. You could be in danger simply for being near me. I'm already near you. Nora reached up, covering his hands with hers. And you're asking the wrong question. You're asking if I'll accept the consequences. You should be asking if I feel the same way. Xenocrates went very still. Do you? I think I've been falling for you since you said I was the first person to touch you without fear. I think I've been falling for you every time you wait through my shift just to walk me to the diner. I think I've been falling for you every time you look at me like I'm something precious. She squeezed his hands. So yes, I feel the same way. He kissed her then, careful and reverent, as if she might break. His lips were cool, but they warmed where they met hers, and when she kissed him back she felt him make a sound low in his chest that might have been relief or joy or both. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I will handle the court, he said. I will find a way to make this work that does not endanger you or require me to abandon you, I promise. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, Nora said. Just stay, please. I am not going anywhere. But the court came for him anyway. 3 nights later, Nora arrived at the clinic to find Xenocrates waiting outside, tension rolling off him in waves. They have demanded I return, he said without preamble. A formal summons from the entire noble council. If I do not appear before them within 48 hours, they will consider it an abdication, then you have to go, and leave you unprotected? Valdrin made it clear that you are seen as a vulnerability. If I am not here, I'll be fine. I've been taking care of myself for 28 years. I think I can manage a few more days. Nora took his hands, cold and strong. Go deal with your court. Figure out what you need to figure out. I'm not going anywhere. You could come with me. The offer hung between them, terrifying and tempting. To Vampire Court? As what exactly? As the woman I love. Xenocrates pulled her closer. I know it is too soon. I know we have only known each other for a handful of weeks. But I have lived for 6 centuries, Nora, and I have never felt like this. I do not need more time to know what I want. What do you want? A life with you, whatever form that takes. But I cannot have that until I resolve matters with the court. He kissed her forehead, gentle. Come with me. Let me show you my world. Let me protect you while I negotiate our future. Nora thought about her empty apartment, her crushing debt, the clinic that ran on fumes, and her own exhaustion. She thought about the fact that she was falling in love with a man who wasn't a man at all, who existed in a world she didn't understand, who was offering her a glimpse of something impossible. Okay, she said. I'll come. The vampire court existed beneath the city, in a network of tunnels and chambers that had been excavated over centuries. Xenocrates led her down through an entrance hidden in an abandoned subway station, through passages lined with stone and lit by what looked like gas lamps but burned with cold white flame. This has been here the whole time, Nora whispered, awed despite herself. Since the founding of the city, we prefer to remain separate from human concerns but close enough to access the resources we need. Xenocrates kept her hand firmly in his as they walked. The court convenes in the central chamber. I will need to meet with them alone initially, but I have arranged quarters for you. You will be safe there, will I? Nora looked at the vampires they passed, all of them pale and beautiful and coldly curious. They're staring at me like I'm dinner. You are under my protection. Anyone who touches you answers to me. The ice in his voice made several nearby vampires step back. They know this. He led her to a set of rooms that were surprisingly comfortable, decorated in dark wood and deep colors. There was a bed, a sitting area, even a small bathroom. I will return as soon as I can, Xenocrates said. Do not leave these rooms without me, please. I'm not stupid enough to wander around Vampire Central alone. He kissed her, quick and fierce, and then he was gone. Nora waited. She paced the rooms, examined the antique furniture, tried not to think about the fact that she was underground surrounded by vampires. Hours passed. She dozed fitfully on the bed, woke to the sound of the door opening. Xenocrates looked exhausted in a way she'd never seen. He slumped into a chair, head in his hands. That bad? Nora asked. They want me to renounce you. The full council united for once. They say a human cannot be the companion of a vampire king, that it sets a dangerous precedent, that it makes me look weak, that it will destabilize the court. He looked up at her, anguish in his eyes. Valdrin has been gathering support for weeks. He has convinced them that my time with you is a symptom of my failing ability to rule. Maybe they're right. Nora sat on the arm of his chair, running her fingers through his white hair. Maybe you need someone who understands your world, not someone who's going to need everything explained. I need you. He caught her hand, pressed it to his cheek. But I will not keep you if it means putting you in danger. Valdrin has made threats, Nora, veiled but clear enough. If I do not give you up, he will make sure you are removed as a factor. He's going to kill me. He is going to try. The words settled between them, cold and heavy. Then what do we do? Nora asked. I have a proposal to make to the court. It is risky and it may not work, but it is the only path I can see that keeps both you and my throne intact. Xenocrates stood, pulling her into his arms. I am going to offer Valdrin what he truly wants, which is to rule. Not now, but with certainty in the future. If I step back from active kingship, transition to an advisory role, and name him as heir, he gains the throne without further bloodshed. The court gains stability and a clear succession plan, and I gain the freedom to live a life that is not entirely consumed by ruling. Nora pulled back to look at him. You'd give up being king? I would step back from daily governance while maintaining my title and position in the court. It is not unprecedented. Several of the older vampire lines have done similar transitions. He cupped her face in his hands. I have been king for 600 years, Nora. I am tired. I want to live on a mortal pace for a while, to have time that is not filled with political maneuvering and power struggles. I want to spend my evenings with you, to learn how to be just Xenocrates instead of Xenocrates Dreadhaven, king of the Eastern Territories. And you think Valdrin will accept that? If I also agree to his other demand, he wants reforms, changes to how we interact with the human world. He is not wrong that we have been too isolated, too rigid in our old ways. I will support his modernization efforts in exchange for his acceptance of you and our relationship. You've thought this through. I have had several hours to negotiate with a council of immortals who see change as a threat. I have thought about very little else. He kissed her forehead. But I need to know that you want this, that you want me, with all the complications that entails. I cannot offer you immortality unless you choose it, which I would never pressure you to do. I cannot offer you normalcy. What I can offer is myself, as much of my time as you want, and a life that is strange and difficult and sometimes dangerous, but ours. Nora thought about the clinic, about her tiny apartment, about the life she'd been living. Then she thought about the last few weeks, about the way Xenocrates looked at her, about the way he waited patiently through her shifts and listened to her talk about her day, and made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. I want you, she said, whatever that looks like. I want this. The relief in his expression was heartbreaking. Then I will go back to the council and present the proposal. If they accept, we will have our future. If they do not, he trailed off. If they don't, we'll figure something else out. Nora kissed him, trying to pour all her certainty into it, together. The council met in a vast chamber carved from stone, lit by hundreds of the cold burning lamps. Nora stood beside Xenocrates as he presented his proposal to the assembled vampires. Valdrin sat in a position of prominence, his expression unreadable. You would step aside? One of the elder vampires asked, skepticism clear in her voice. I would transition my role, yes. I have served as your king for 6 centuries. I have earned the right to choose how I spend the next 6, and I choose to spend them in a different manner. Xenocrates stood tall, regal despite everything. Valdrin has proven himself capable in his challenge. He is strong, he is forward-thinking, and he has the support of many of you. With proper guidance, he will make an excellent king. And what of the human? Valdrin asked, his voice cutting. You would still keep her? I would. She is mine, and I am hers. This is not negotiable. Xenocrates' hand found Nora's, threading their fingers together. But she will not be paraded before you as a weakness. She will live her life, I will live mine, and our relationship will be our own business. Until she dies, another vampire said. Mortals are fragile. She will age and wither while you remain unchanged. How is this sustainable? That is for Nora and I to navigate, not for the court to dictate. Xenocrates looked at Valdrin. Do we have an agreement? You accept my transition and my choice of companion, and I support your succession and your reforms. Valdrin was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, moving to stand directly in front of Xenocrates. You are serious about this. You would truly give up active rule for her. I would. Then you are either the wisest king we have ever had or the greatest fool. Valdrin extended his hand. I accept your terms. You will retain your title and your seat on the council. I will assume daily governance as your named heir. And the human lives, untouched and under the protection of the throne. Xenocrates took his hand and Nora felt the tension in the room shift. It wasn't warmth, exactly, but it was acceptance. The council agrees? Xenocrates asked, looking at the assembled vampires. One by one, they nodded. It took 3 months to transition the power, 3 months of negotiations and ceremonies and formal declarations. Nora moved out of her apartment and into a house that Xenocrates owned on the edge of the city, a beautiful old place with gardens and rooms full of books. She kept working at the clinic, but the schedule became manageable when a mysterious anonymous donation arrived that allowed them to hire 2 more nurses and a part-time doctor. You're not subtle, Nora told Xenocrates when she figured out the donation had come from him. I never claimed to be. You said the clinic needed funding. The clinic has funding. It seems straightforward to me. You can't just throw money at all my problems. I can, and I will. He pulled her into his lap, nuzzling her neck. Let me take care of you. You have spent your entire life taking care of everyone else. It is my turn. She was learning to accept it, the care and attention he lavished on her, the way he made sure she ate properly, slept enough, took days off, the way he waited up for her when she worked late, then carried her to bed when she fell asleep on the couch, the way he touched her constantly, as if still amazed that he was allowed, as if he needed the physical reassurance that she was real and present and his. They talked about the future often, about the choice that would eventually come. I will not pressure you, Xenocrates said one night, lying in bed with her head on his chest. If you choose to remain human and live a mortal span, I will treasure every moment we have. If you choose to turn to become like me, I will be honored to spend eternity with you. But it has to be your choice, freely made. What do you want? Nora asked. Honestly, I want you to stay human for a while. I want to experience this, the preciousness of limited time. I have been immortal for so long that I have forgotten what it is to value each moment because it will not last forever. He ran his fingers through her hair, gentle. Ask me again in 50 years and my answer may be different. But for now, I want this. I want you exactly as you are. So she stayed human, and they built a life together. Xenocrates took a position as a medical consultant, using his centuries of knowledge to help train new doctors. Nora kept working at the clinic, but now with reasonable hours and actual support. They had dinners together, quiet evenings reading in front of the fireplace, long conversations that lasted until dawn. Valdrin, surprisingly, became something almost like a friend. He visited occasionally, updating Xenocrates on court matters, asking for advice on particularly difficult decisions. He and Nora developed a wary mutual respect. You made him happy, Valdrin said one evening, finding Nora in the garden while Xenocrates was inside. I did not think that was possible. He made himself happy. I just reminded him it was an option. He was a good king, rigid, yes, but fair and strong. But he is a better man now. Valdrin looked at her with those ice-chip eyes. I owe you an apology. I threatened you because I saw you as a weakness. I understand now that you are his strength. I'm just a nurse, Nora said, but she was smiling. 2 years after they met, Xenocrates proposed with a ring that had been in his family for 4 centuries. They married in the garden, with Marcus and the clinic staff on one side and a selection of carefully chosen vampires on the other. Valdrin officiated, using his position as king to grant the marriage recognition in both the human and vampire worlds. I never imagined this, Nora said during their first dance, swaying in Xenocrates' arms under lantern light. Any of this, neither did I. I thought I would rule until I was finally defeated in battle, and that would be the end of my story. He spun her gently. You gave me a different ending, a better one. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning. 5 years in, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Nora came home from the clinic to find Xenocrates in the kitchen, looking uncharacteristically nervous. I have something to show you, he said. He led her downtown to a building she didn't recognize. When he unlocked the door, she found herself standing in a fully equipped medical facility, smaller than a hospital but much larger than the free clinic. What is this? She asked. The Ashford Community Health Center. Fully funded, fully staffed, offering free and low-cost care to anyone who needs it. Xenocrates wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. I know you love the clinic, but you have mentioned wanting to expand services, to do more. This is yours if you want it. You can hire whomever you like, set whatever policies you want. I simply provided the building and the initial funding. Nora turned in his arms, tears streaming down her face. You built me a clinic, I built us a legacy. I have spent 6 centuries accumulating wealth and power. I would like to spend the next few decades using it for something good. With you." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "What do you think?" "I think I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone." The health center opened 6 months later, on a cold January morning. Nora hired Marcus as the office manager, brought in 2 of the nurses from the free clinic, and added a dentist, a mental health counselor, and a social worker. They saw 50 patients the first week, 100 the second. By the end of the first month, they had a waiting list. Xenocrates often stopped by during evening hours, ostensibly to check on building maintenance, but really just to watch Nora work. She'd find him in the break room reading, and he'd look up and smile as if she was the best thing he'd ever seen. "You're staring again," she'd say. "I am appreciating," he'd correct. 10 years after their first meeting, they had a celebration. Not an anniversary exactly, but a recognition of the life they'd built together. The health center was thriving, serving thousands of patients a year. Xenocrates had published several medical texts, contributing centuries of vampire healing knowledge to human medicine in carefully disguised ways. They had a home full of books and light, friends in both the human and vampire worlds, and each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Nora asked that night, curled up with him in bed. "Stepping back from being king? Not once. Not ever." Xenocrates kissed her temple. "Valdrin is a good ruler, better than I was in some ways, more adaptable. And I have this, I have you, I have a purpose that is not about power or politics. I have gentle hands touching me every day, and a partner who sees me as just a man, and a life that feels real instead of performed." "I'm going to get old," Nora said quietly. It was a conversation they'd been dancing around for years. "I'm 38. In another decade I'll start to look it. In 2 decades I'll be elderly by human standards, and you will be beautiful at every age." He pulled her closer. "I meant what I said 10 years ago. I treasure the mortality of this. The fact that our time is limited makes it more precious. When and if you decide you want to turn, I will turn you. But I do not need you to be immortal to love you forever." "Ask me when I'm 50, Nora said. "If I still feel useful, if I can still work, I might want to stay human longer. But eventually we'll make that choice together. There is no rush, we have time." They did have time. Years of it, precious and perfect in its ordinariness. Nora ran the health center with passionate efficiency, expanding services, training new staff, becoming a fixture in the community. Xenocrates supported her, helped her, loved her with a devotion that never wavered. When Nora turned 50, they had the conversation seriously for the first time. "I'm not ready yet," she said. "I'm still healthy, still capable, the center needs me. But maybe in another 10 years? Then we will revisit this in 10 years, Xenocrates agreed. "I am patient, I have eternity." But at 58, when Nora started to feel the weight of mortality more acutely, when climbing stairs left her breathless and her joints ached on cold mornings, she brought it up again. "I think I'm ready," she said. "I've lived a full human life. I've done everything I wanted to do as a mortal, and I'm not ready to leave you. I'm not ready for this to end." "Are you certain?" "Once it is done, it cannot be undone." "I'm certain. Turn me. Let me have eternity with you." The turning was not easy, but Xenocrates was with her through every moment of it. The pain, the fever, the 3 days of transition where her body remade itself on a cellular level. When she woke on the 4th day, it was to a world that looked sharper, sounded clearer, felt more vivid in every way, and Xenocrates was there holding her hand, looking at her with wonder. "Hello," he said softly. "Hello," Nora replied, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "How do I look?" "Like the woman I fell in love with, just more so." He helped her sit up, steadied her when she swayed. "Your hair has gone white, very distinguished." Nora looked at her reflection in the mirror across the room and saw herself transformed. White hair, pale skin, the same features but refined, somehow perfected. She looked like she belonged in Xenocrates' world now. "I'm a vampire," she said, testing the words. "You are. How do you feel?" "Strong, clear, like I could run a marathon or fight a bear." "Is this normal?" "Perfectly normal. The strength fades to manageable levels after a few weeks. In the meantime, try not to break anything important." He kissed her, and she could feel the difference, could sense his heartbeat through his skin even though vampires technically didn't have heartbeats.
"Welcome to immortality, my love."
They went back to the health center together once Nora had adjusted to her new state. She could work longer hours now without exhaustion, could help patients with a steadiness that never wavered. She explained her dramatically changed appearance as the result of a rare medical condition, and most people were polite enough not to pry. Marcus figured it out within a week. "You're one of them now," he said, not quite accusing. "I am. Is that going to be a problem? Are you still going to run this place and help people?" "Of course." "Then no, it's not a problem. Just maybe warn a guy next time you're going to show up looking like you joined a goth rock band." 20 years after Nora's turning, 40 years after they first met, they stood together at the health center's anniversary celebration. The facility had expanded twice, now serving over 20,000 patients a year. They'd added a full laboratory, a pharmacy, and a mobile health unit that traveled to underserved neighborhoods. "We did this," Nora said, watching the celebration through the window. "You and me, we actually made a difference." "You made a difference. I simply provided resources." Xenocrates wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "You are the heart of this place. You always have been. We're the heart of it, together." She turned in his arms, kissing him deeply. Even after 40 years, the touch still sent electricity through her, still felt like coming home. "I love you. I have loved you since you stumbled into my clinic bleeding silver and looking lost. I was lost. You found me." He rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you, Nora Dreadhaven, for touching me without fear all those years ago. For seeing me as just a man who needed help. For giving me a reason to step down from a throne I had stopped enjoying and build a life I actually want to live. Thank you for waiting through all those night shifts. For buying me coffee and walking me to diners and making me feel like I mattered." They stood together, watching their community celebrate the health center, watching the life they'd built together thrive. Outside, the city moved at its mortal pace, people living and dying and continuing onward. But inside, two immortals held each other and remembered the moment everything changed, the moment a broke nurse bandaged a vampire king's wound and saw him not as a ruler but as a person in need. Valdrin appeared beside them, silent as always. "The council sends their regards," he said, "and their thanks. Your donations to the vampire health initiatives have been instrumental in modernizing our approach to medicine." "Our pleasure," Xenocrates said. "How goes the throne?" "Exhausting. I have newfound respect for your 6 centuries of service." Valdrin looked at Nora. "He seems happy, happier than I have ever seen him." "He is," Nora confirmed. "We both are. Then I suppose you were right all those years ago. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to step back and let yourself just live." Valdrin inclined his head. "Enjoy your evening, and congratulations on the center's success." He left and they were alone again. 40 years, Nora said wonderingly, "and it still feels new." "We have eternity ahead of us," Xenocrates replied, "and I intend to spend every moment of it reminding you that you are loved, treasured, and the best decision I have ever made. Even better than becoming king? Especially better than becoming king. Kings are lonely, distant, untouchable. I spent 6 centuries in that isolation. Now I have you, and I am simply Xenocrates, beloved of Nora, builder of health centers, and the happiest man in any world." She kissed him again, there in the window of the health center they'd built together, surrounded by the community they served. Outside, volunteers were setting up tables for the celebration. Inside, the examination room stood ready for the next day's patients. And through it all, 2 people who had found each other against all odds held tight and refused to let go. The years continued. They worked at the health center, trained new providers, expanded services to include elder care and pediatric specialties. They traveled when they wanted to, seeing the world at their own pace. They returned to the vampire court occasionally, maintaining connections, offering counsel when asked. They had friends in both worlds, a life that spanned the gap between mortal and immortal and each other. One evening, 60 years after that first meeting, they sat in their garden watching the sunset. Nora's white hair was loose around her shoulders, and Xenocrates had his arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on top of her head. "Do you remember the night we met?" Nora asked. "Every detail. You were exhausted, worried about inventory, ready to go home. And then a fool vampire king collapsed at your door, bleeding all over your clean floor. You were so polite about it, apologizing for the intrusion while you had a gaping wound in your side. I was raised in the 14th century. Manners were emphasized." He kissed her hair. "You did not hesitate. You just helped. No questions, no fear, just immediate, competent care. I fell in love with you in that moment, though I did not realize it yet. I thought you were going to die on my examination table, or disappear and make me think I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Instead, I kept coming back. I could not stay away." His arms tightened around her. "You gave me something I had not had in 600 years. You gave me gentleness. You gave me touch without agenda. You gave me permission to be something other than a king. You gave me someone who saw me as more than just a caretaker, someone who insisted on taking care of me for a change." Nora leaned back into his embrace. "Best night of my life, even if I didn't know it at the time." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The garden around them was full of flowers Nora had planted over the decades, blooming in impossible profusion. The house behind them was warm and full of light, full of the life they'd built together. "I love you," Xenocrates said quietly. "I will love you for as long as we both exist, and beyond if such a thing is possible." "I love you too," Nora replied. "Thank you for letting me touch you all those years ago. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for seeing me, for treating me like a person instead of a title, for building this beautiful, impossible life with me." They stayed in the garden until the stars came out, 2 immortals wrapped in each other's arms. grateful for every moment. Tomorrow they would return to the health center, would treat patients and train staff and continue the work they loved. But tonight they simply held each other and remembered how it all began, with a broke nurse, a wounded king, and a moment of gentle touch that changed everything. And they lived, happily and purposefully, for all the long years that followed, together in a world that had room for both of them, a world they had helped make a little bit better simply by existing in it and loving each other fiercely through it all.